All right, we are joined today by Jack Whitt, one of our 2020 Summit League Hall of Fame inductees. Jack, congratulations on that honor.
Thanks, man. I'm very, very fortunate and happy, I guess. This kind of took me as a shock getting that email. So,
Good. You definitely deserved it, and you're the first field athlete that's in our Hall of Fame. We had 2017 was our first inaugural class, and we've had a 2018 class. Took a year off in 19, and 2020 you're in along with four other people. So exciting to have another ORU Golden Eagle in there. There's a few of you. I think you guys are the most represented school in our Hall of Fame, so that's pretty cool too.
yeah, I enjoyed my time there, and it kind of worked out in my favor. So, but
yeah, well, let's talk about how you get into the sport of pole vaulting. Like, how does all that happen? It's not something that maybe you as a 3-year-old you want to be a pole vaulter. So when did that kind of start and get going for you?
Well, I mean, it started in 7th grade, but I grew up in a really sports-driven household. My sister was a collegiate fast pitch player at Wichita State. So, I mean, sports played a huge role in our life growing up. I mean, it was pretty much year-round basketball, baseball, football for me. Funny thing, we had an award at my middle school that was called the Lions Pride Award, and you had to do 7th and 8th grade. You had to play 3 sports, and so I was like, well, I got to do track because they didn't offer baseball, and it's ironic that like I actually missed pole vault tryouts because I was gone for some reason, and I had to beg the coach who was my football basketball coach, just give me one shot, and he legitimately was like, you have one chance to go in there and clear whatever that rubber band was at. Luckily I did pretty well. Just naturally, I did a lot of stuff on my own without really needing much coaching, which kind of aided in my future endeavors in high school and stuff. And that's kind of where it all started. Going into high school, my dad was a pretty firm believer in focus on one sport. Like that's what you got to do and give it your all. And of course, I was young and dumb, and I know better than you. And I tried to do, I did summer baseball, which put me behind for football. And then I played football, which put me behind for basketball. And then I did basketball, and I got into track late. And, that was one of my hardest decisions was, do I continue to do track, which is new and cool and fun? Or, I mean, I had a pretty good passion for baseball. I was a pitcher and first baseman, and I really, really enjoyed it because I started baseball and basketball when I was 5 years old. So that's all I really knew. Luckily, I picked the right decision going into my sophomore year, and I had a really, really cool high school track coach that coached my sister, who was a state champion in the 4x1. And he basically was like, you can do cross country. You don't have to run, show up, work out. If you want to pole vault, pole vault. He knew that my dad would keep me, in line and make sure I wasn't out there messing around and goofing off. And so I attribute a lot to him. His name's Mike Ramsey, just giving me that freedom to go out there. And, I think between my freshman and sophomore year, I gained like 20 pounds because he let me go work out and pole vault. And anytime the weather was nice, I could just, I could practice. And that's really what a young kid needs, is just reps and some sort of direction. And I think I started out my sophomore year at 11.6. And then that spring, I won a state championship at 15 foot. And then that summer I jumped 16 foot. And around that time, I ended up, after I'd won state, I got a personal coach named Tim McMichael, who I learned an extraordinary amount of stuff from. He helped me really develop as an athlete, and he's super technical and really, driven in that aspect, because I wasn't the best athlete. I wasn't the fastest. I was tall, so I got away with a lot of stuff. But, he really helped me teach me how to pole vault. And then going into my senior year, Coach Dial did clinics. And ironically, Tim McMichael was coached by Joe Dial in college. And I ended up going to Coach Dial because he was the only one in the area that had an indoor facility, that he would do little high school clinics every now and then and go up there, kind of get my feet wet. And, Tim really was a big proponent of the run and the takeoff and all that. Well, Dial was a lot more interested in, what happened after you left the ground, because, I had a really good foundation. And between, those two, I got the best of both worlds, because I was coming back number one in the country my junior year, 16.9, and I started going up to dial, and something clicked. And my first out, I think I jumped 17.2 indoors. I was number one in the country. And my first outdoor meet as a senior in high school, I jumped the state record, which ironically was Joe Dial's record.
Right.
So, which inevitably I ended up going to ORU, and I was coached by him. So it was kind of a fun little back and forth. And it was like a 10-inch PR, in one meet. And then it kind of set the foundation there. And I jumped 18 and a quarter in Texas. And I had a pretty good high school senior year. I think I went to like 25 meets, counting all my summer stuff. And I jumped over 17 at 21 of them. And, which back then was a pretty big deal. Nowadays, it's not as big, because you got, 10 dudes that are jumping 18 foot in high school all of a sudden. And, but yeah, then, I made the choice of going up to Oral Roberts. It was something about, Joe Dial's Joe Dial. He is who he is. His accolades and achievements kind of speak for themselves. And it helped that, it's 2 hours away from home. I'm kind of a homebody. I had a pretty serious girlfriend at the time, which is now my wife. That helped. She ended up coming up to school with me and ended up being the track manager. So she got to go to track meets and film and, be a part of that. And I could still come home on the weekends and go out to the lake and go do outdoor stuff. And, we just kind of went from there. So, yeah.
That was great. Just to look back on the high school career, and you touched on some of the things I wanted, just the Joe Dial relationship, and was it ORU all the way for you coming out of high school? Yeah.
No, I'll be really honest. I didn't even know ORU existed. I'm from Norman, so OU and OSU is all we ever hear about. I didn't know Oral Roberts was a thing until my dad knew of them, just because my dad's from Duncan, Joe Dial's from Marlow. It's like 15 minutes from each other. And my dad was huge in, the process of recruitment, and he was sending out letters and emails. And as soon as I hit that, pivotal 16-foot mark, he was sending out resumes. And I remember Coach Dial came to my first track meet indoors that he could actually send an email, and I jumped like 14.6. It wasn't even like good. Like my PR was almost 17 foot at the time. I remember it being like midnight or something, and we got an email the next day, and it was like, I want them. I'll pay whatever I need to. The money's there. Just purely off of, he's like, I watched him run down the runway. That's all I needed to see. Just there's stuff that he's doing that is really hard to teach. And I feel like that kind of set a huge, I don't know, it just, for somebody to take a leap of faith like that, watching a kid jump, 14.6 when, it wasn't a good meet for me. And then the next day he's like, no, I want him. Tell me what I need to do, and let's make this happen. And I didn't have a lot of other coaches that were doing that until, there's a ton of Big 12 schools that wanted me. Obviously OU was interested a little bit, not as much as you would think, but I know that kind of set the tone for me. And then just him being him. He's a country boy from Marlow, and that his personality and my personality meshed really, really well. I knew that I wasn't going to show up day one and he was going to reteach me how to do things. Like, that's huge for a coach like me. And that was one of the first questions I would ask coaches is like, tell me 3 things that you would change, day one. And everybody, of course, has this long list. Well, you got to do this and you got to do this different. He was just like, nothing. I'm going to make you a better athlete, and we're going to make some minor tweaks, and then you're going to jump, 19 foot and win a national championship. Like that was his goal from day one is, it's a project, it's a process. You got 4 years with me. I'm going to develop you in 4 years and have you ready when you need to be ready. And, just that type of confidence and that type of attitude, I was like, yeah, that's where I want to be, so I don't want to go somewhere where this guy's going to try and reinvent the wheel. there's a lot of different ways to pole vault, and I like coaches that aren't just stuck in their ways, and and he wasn't that. And like I said, the relationship we had from day one was just, I don't know. I mean, I felt like I became more of like a son to him. My 4 years there, and then I ended up training there for another 4 or 5 years. And I mean, I called him almost every day, even if I didn't see him at practice. And his three boys are, I mean, I was in his oldest son's wedding, and his middle son's like a little brother to me. And, we still talk to this day. So just, it was a different type of bond. And I just didn't get that with any other coaches. So it was pretty huge to me, just that relationship.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like you said, just a little thing, like he held the Oklahoma high school record, and you broke that, and just the link that you guys have is, it's obviously pretty special. Just
it's a good story, man.
No doubt, no doubt. So take us back to 2012 Outdoor National Championship. You had finished runner-up 2011, and you finally got the trophy in 2012. Just tell us about that meet.
Well, it was different. I've never felt more ready to jump high than that meet. And then my senior year outdoors, there's just, some days you just show up and you're like, man, I'm going to be hard to beat. And there were dudes out there that could out jump me. I'm not going to lie. I mean, but I felt really, really good. And Coach Styles, I mean, he straight up told me, you're going to win this thing. Like, nobody here is going to out jump you. You're going to win this thing. So his confidence level was through the roof. He knew where I was athletically. 2012 was kind of a long year for me, because that, indoors was the first year that I had an actual real injury that was kind of bothering me enough to where we looked into possibly redshirting. And luckily I had a chiropractor that up in Tulsa, that his name's Michael Peterson. And I mean, he was the only one that, I went to orthopedic surgeon and shoulder specialist after shoulder specialist, got MRIs and injections, and I had just a swollen rotator cuff, something that you would think was relatively minor. But it got to where, it was kind of hard for me to lift my arms up, and a lot of pain when jumping. And we shot it up with a bunch of cortisone before indoors and tried to kind of numb it as much as we could. And I got through indoors, and, like I said, Michael Peterson was the only one that he was like, man, I got this. Give me a month. We'll get you lined up before outdoor nationals. And sure enough, I mean, I was pain free. So, going into that year, I had some stuff that was kind of bothering me, but like I said, you show up to nationals and you just had that feeling of, today's the day. It's perfect weather. You couldn't have asked for, I mean, straight down the pipe, big tailwind, warm day, not, 120 degrees. And it was one of those days. And I mean, I think Dial did a really good job of, always having me ready for nationals. And it kind of, the results for me, showed for itself with the 7 All-Americans. And, 3 of them were second places. And, that kind of stinks, but it is what it is. So.
Yeah, you got one though, and that's gotta feel good. Just talk about the mindset of a pole vaulter, and what it, like, you're competing against the bar, but you're also competing against other guys to try to beat them. Like, what's your mindset going into a big meet like that?
Man, I'm probably not the best person to ask, because I'm a goofball when it comes to getting ready for track meets. And even at track meets, I'm the one goofing around eating snacks and candy while everybody else is so nervous they're about to throw up and don't talk to me. But I don't know, it kind of helps me, because it's playtime until you step foot on the runway. Then it's time to get down to business. And that's how I kind of took my entire career, even high school and everything. Is I want to be light, I want to have fun, I want to crack jokes. I'm not going to be overly serious, because when I'm not having fun, I'm not going to jump high. So, and you just kind of had to pick and choose, because like I said, there were some athletes that you did not talk to at nationals, because I mean, they were so focused that if they got out of their zone, they self-implode, which I'm just not one of those people. And then you got the other guys like me that are messing around and cracking jokes, and you got some people taking naps, and like, you just got to kind of know your audience. But man, my mindset is I'm there to win. So every nationals, there's just kind of a check mark. Opening bar is the hardest for me. I mean, that's the scariest bar of the entire competition. I don't care if I'm jumping at a PR or a bar to win. That opening bar is, once I get that out of the way, it's cruise control. And then it's, okay, I want to be top 8, All-American. The little trophy, that's what matters. Once I'm top 8, it doesn't matter at that point. It's either you're top 8 or you're first.
Right.
Because nobody cares if you got, I got second 3 times and third twice. Like nobody knows that other than I won one time, in 2012 outdoors. So that was mine and Coach Powell were on the same page. We're going to get the trophy. Once we're in the trophy, we're going to win. So if we got to pass bars or make minor tweaks, that's what we're going to do. So I think, with that mindset, we were relatively competitive, and it may have cost me, one other championship, but it's hard to say because, like I said, I was never the guy out there that had the highest PR, and I was always relatively competitive at the top, but there's always dudes out there that could either jump right with me or higher than me. So it came kind of down to just who's on that day. And I attribute that to Coach Dow more than anybody, because I was always athletically and physically at my peak at nationals. It just kind of came down to me and how I'm going to deal with the weather and the conditions and the competition. So, but I kept a pretty level head. And what's funny is, like, I'm a firefighter now, and it's kind of the same thing. We're messing around, we're having fun until we're on scene, and I have a real good way of kind of flipping a switch, getting serious, doing my job, and then flipping that switch right back off and getting back to everyday life. So, yeah.
Cool. That's an interesting mindset, and everybody's different, and everybody's got their own way to do it, and you were successful in that way, like you said, 7-time All-American. So, talk a little bit about beyond college, like the idea of I can be a professional in this sport, and being able to go to some international events and have some success in that arena too.
Yeah, it's different because, professional athlete, big woo-woo, but it's not basketball, it's not football or baseball. We're not making hundreds of millions of dollars. So especially for a pole vaulter, it can be relatively difficult. I got really fortunate that I made a world championship team right out of college. It was really just kind of right place, right time. And I was fortunate to make that team, because then I got endorsed by Nike for the next 4 years. And that kind of set the stepping stones. I had a really good agent, Jeff Hartwig, who was also a pole vaulter and former American record holder. And so with that came, I had an agent and a coach who traveled to the majority of the meets with me. And I got to go to a lot of really cool places. Financially, I was fortunate that my wife, she's an RN. So that really helped. And then I had a lot of outside support with a guy named Phil Burns helped me, for 4 years out of college, and with some travel stuff and equipment. And UCS Spirit, I got all the poles I ever needed. And then Coach Dow, I had a training facility, and Michael Peterson, I had physios. And I was pretty fortunate, out of college, not having to work a job. I could focus on track and field, which not a lot of pole vaulters can say that, unless you're winning medals or going to diamond leagues. I wasn't quite that caliber yet. So I got to go to a bunch of international meets and see a lot of really, really cool places, and places I never would have went if I didn't, and it didn't cost me anything. And on top of that, I got to have fun and meet new people. And like I said, without, a large backing of support with my family and friends and sponsors and stuff like that, I don't think I would have been as successful as I was. And yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I miss it for sure. But
Right. So what was maybe your favorite international spot that you went to, or your favorite competition? Like, which one jumps to your mind right away?
Well, so the Reno Pole Vault Summit, it's not even international. It's in Nevada. That's that's by far, and I'd be willing to bet it's the majority of U.S. pole vaulters' favorite meet. I mean, there's like 3,000, 2 to 3,000 pole vaulters. There's 15 pits in a convention center. Friday nights for the the elite section or whatever, and we get to have a big showcase. And there's just so much interaction and fans and people, like-minded people that are there for pole vaulting, and that's, I mean, the sole purpose they're there. I mean, the energy is incredible, the setup's incredible, and that's one that from high school, I always look forward to going to. And then obviously Texas Relays has a huge spot in my heart, because that's where I jumped 18 foot in high school. And again, it's a fun meet. And I mean, there was a couple meets overseas that I really enjoyed. There was one in Rotok Egern, which was a raised runway. The platform was actually hovering over a lake, and just it's in Germany or Bavaria or something. And I mean, the lake is crystal clear. There's mountains and people parasailing and skydiving all over the place, and just the energy overseas is it's incredible. Because I mean, people get to go over there and they drink beer and eat food, and they're loud and into it. I mean, this is their football, their basketball, and it's, I mean, up close and as personal as it gets. I mean, there's people standing, feet from the runway, and like I said, they're loud and they're into it. So any type of street vault over in Europe is always super fun. But the pole vault summit, I mean, is hands down. That's always been my favorite and will always be my favorite. And I have a 3-year-old son, and I'm crossing my fingers that, one, he wants to pole vault, and 2, that it's still around. So
Yeah, that's really cool. And you talk about all these things and how you miss it. So, and you mentioned that you're a firefighter now. Like, is that just kind of in your DNA? Just these, like, pole vaulting it's kind of risky, and firefighting is obviously risky. Like, I mean, are there parallels there to just kind of the type of guy you are?
I just, honestly, I don't do well being cooped up. And I mean, even in my interview process for the fire department, I was like, I had a suit on. I was like, I'm not a suit guy. I'm not an office guy. I need to be out. I mean, on my days off, I build outdoor stuff. I build pergolas and decks, and I like being outside. I like working with my hands. I don't mind manual labor. The risk factor it's calculated, just like pole vaulting. So I mean, there is some, and I mean, that I wouldn't say that's what drew me into it, but just being kind of a public servant and giving back to the community. That, like I said, I had so much support while I competed. I mean, that's the least I can do, is try and give back as much as I can. And I have a wife who's an RN, so she's kind of in that realm of helping. And I don't know, a lot of it was, I was really fortunate to get the job, because I didn't realize how competitive it was whenever I applied. There was like 600 people applying for 10 jobs.
Oh, wow.
And somehow a ex-pole vaulter with zero experience, they took a leap of faith, and it worked out for me. And I don't know. I want my son to be able to grow up and be like, my dad does this, and say it with his chest held high and be proud of it. And I think I'm kind of working towards that. So I mean, that's the biggest thing, is just kind of giving back and doing my part to help people. And I know that's a real generic answer, but I mean, that's honestly what it is. And on top of that, I get to have a lot of fun. It's that same team atmosphere of, for 24 hours, I'm living with a group of guys. A third of my life, I'm at the fire station with my quote unquote brothers, and we rely on each other, and we work with each other, and we better each other. And that I like that, because I grew up with, that's all I knew was sports and teams, and being around people and fellowship. And I'm very, very fortunate that I get to carry that on through a full-time career, for the next 25, 30 years. So
Yeah, that's really cool. And like you said, public service like that, obviously we appreciate you guys and all that you're doing right now. The world's a little wacky right now with the coronavirus and just the social unrest. So we certainly appreciate it. And I can probably talk to you for another hour, but I feel like you got a 3-year-old to attend to and get back to your life. But hey, it was great catching up with you. Congratulations again on your induction into the Summer League Hall of Fame. As I mentioned, you're the first field guy, first pole vaulter. I think you might have one coming down the line.
Yeah,
Right?
we'll definitely have another one here pretty soon.
Yeah,
So,
Chris Nielsen at South Dakota has done some pretty
yeah,
amazing
pretty
things this
amazing
last
stuff.
couple of years.
Yeah, but no, thank you so much. It's an honor, and I really appreciate it.
Sounds good, Jack. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.